All right, welcome everyone. So we're going to get started. Welcome to our very special edition of our Teach Educational Rounds. My name is Natalie, and today we will have the pleasure of hearing from 3 panelists and with real-world experiences of quitting vaping, as well as our very own Rosa Dragonetti, who will be moderating the discussion. We're going to begin today's session with KMH's land acknowledgement. KMH is situated on lands that have been occupied by First Nations for millennia. Lands rich in civilizations with knowledge of medicine, architecture, technology, and extensive trade routes throughout the Americas. In 1860, the site of KMH appeared in the Colonial Records Office of the British Crown as the council grounds of the Mississaugas of the New Credit, as they were known at the time. Today, Toronto is covered by the Toronto Purchase Treaty No. 13 of 1805 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Toronto is now home to a vast diversity of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis who enrich this city. KMH is committed to reconciliation. We will honor the land through programs and places that reflect and respect its heritage. We will embrace the healing traditions of the ancestors and weave them into our caring practices. We will create new relationships and partnerships with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis and share the land and protect it for future generations. Now, I invite everyone to introduce themselves in the chat and let us know which traditional territory you're joining us from today. If you're unsure, you can visit the website that we have up on the slide to find out. I can put the link in the chat in a moment. You're also welcome to let us know something that you're doing to learn or improve your commitment to reconciliation. Now, let me put the link in the chat. One moment. There we go. Now, while I give everyone a chance to do so, I will just add that as a white settler myself, I'm extremely grateful to be joining you all live from KMH today and have the privilege to share the space with everyone and to listen to the stories and experiences of our panelists. So I'll give everyone a chance to introduce themselves in the chat. Welcome, everyone. Awesome. For the time being, I'll keep going with some housekeeping items, but please do feel free to keep sharing in the chat. So if you're interested in receiving a letter of completion for this Teach Educational Rounds, please make sure you have signed in to the webinar using your full first name and last name, as well as completed the pre-learning assessment. And last but not least, make sure to complete the evaluation and post-learning assessment that will be emailed to you by the end of tomorrow. And you'll have 1 week to complete that. And please note that the recording of today's session will be shared with all registrants by tomorrow as well. So please note that the content of Teach Educational Rounds is centered on the following sources and guidelines. Nonetheless, these materials, as well as any verbal discussion, represent only general principles, and they do not remove the need for clinical assessments or healthcare treatment plans from healthcare professionals. So please feel free to use the chat feature throughout the webinar if you'd like to send any questions or prompts to the hosts or myself. And you're more than welcome to send a reaction feature if you'd like to send a smiley face or anything at all throughout the webinar. So now I'll just introduce our moderator for today. We are very pleased to have our very own Rosa Dragonetti here today, who will be moderating the discussion with our panelists. Rosa is KMH's Director of Addictions Education and Research, as well as an assistant professor in the Department of Family and Community Medicine at the University of Toronto. And no disclosures for Rosa or our panelists to report. So with that, I will hand it off to Rosa to take it away. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the webinar.
Great. Thank you very much, Natalie, and welcome to everybody. Good morning. Just one final thank you before I begin. A couple of thank yous. Sorry. One is to the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, the Smoke-Free Ontario strategy, for providing the additional funding to be able to bring this to you, and to, of course, to our panelists who have agreed to come today to share their stories and their experiences in their journey to quit vaping and make changes to that. So let's get started. So why don't we first hear from our panelists, just really briefly introduce yourselves, your name, your age, so we can know how that applies to your journey. And if you want, you can share a really quick tidbit about yourselves. Why don't we start with you?
Hi, my name is Julien. I am 23 years old. I'm 22, sorry. I turned 23 in a couple of weeks. And a fun fact about me is I'm a banquet server, I guess. Yeah.
Fun. You meet lots of good people that way. Yes.
Hi, I'm Dorr. I'm 20 years old. I'm a psychology student at U of T, and I'm interested in doing psychological research in my future.
Great.
Hi, everybody. My name is McNamara. I am 53 years old, and an interesting fact about me is I have spent a lifetime, actually, in recovery of one form or another. I just celebrated 5 years of my own harm reduction recovery program. So no more than 2 or 3 drinks at any sitting, and nothing stronger than weed. And of course, no vaping.
Great. Thank you so much. So let's get started. Let's ask some of these questions, which have come from many of our participants that are attending today. So why don't we start off with maybe providing, briefly describe your experience with vaping and your quit journey, thinking about, maybe some of the strategies that you may have used, what worked, what didn't work for you, any medications that you may have used, like nicotine replacement therapy or any of the prescription medications. So would you want to start off?
Sure.
Okay.
So I vaped for around 3 years. I started when I was 19 years old. I purely started it for the head rush and how it felt, but I could feel over time that my tolerance would build up, and I could feel every time I would relapse how much it was affecting my lungs and my breathing. Some strategies that didn't work for me that I tried were, I guess, lowering the amount of nicotine I was taking in. I went from 50 down to 20%, but I found that it made me crave nicotine more, and I was buying vapes more often and wasting more money. So I tried a different strategy. I tried to, take advantage of my ADHD, and out of sight, out of mind is what worked best for me. Just keeping it away from me. Leaving it at home when I left, or leaving it in my room when I was at home, was the best way to stop vaping for me.
Thank you. I love the way you used some of your strengths to actually develop your own strategies. So thank you. That's great.
I was vaping for about 5-6 years. I started right at the beginning of high school. It's when I first joined the football team. I think it was in literally the first practice. Oh, these kids are vaping in the corner. I want to be cool. So I joined in, and then I stayed addicted until I was 19. And the process was hard because I remember I sort of was like a fiend for it, really, when I was in high school, because I tend to take these sorts of addictions in excess. And then I was doing my best to quit, but then I started to realize that I didn't really want to quit. And then I was identifying as a smoker. And so it was a big transition, me trying to actually not identify as a smoker and move to actually quitting. And I used this KMH stop program to help me, and I used nicotine replacement therapy, nicotine patches.
Thank you for that. And, you shared something that we talk about in this field a lot, is making that shift in the identity from being a smoker to a non-smoker, and how important that is for people's quit journey. So I'm glad that you were able to share that. Last but not least.
Well, thank you so much for actually making mention of that, because I am 5 days a non-smoker. Yay! I actually, myself, I only vaped for about 6 months, and it was only within about the last year. So I my smoking journey itself was only when I drank up until about age 38, but it always overtakes you, these very strong addictions. And before I knew it, I was a daily smoker. So I had quit smoking for 3 years at a time, each time that I did smoke, and those occurred within the last 10 years. So with the vaping, my primary way of quitting was literally to go back to smoking. However, in terms of stamping out nicotine, I used a booklet that the Nicotine Dependence Clinic has given to me over the years. Every time I've walked through their doors, and they very generously helped me out, which had many, many strategies in it, but also helped me to set goals, helped me to look at my values. What do I value in life? And I'm a singer, so if I smoke too much, I sound like a frog, and I don't want to sound like a frog. I want to be able to have a clear voice. I also suffer from COPD, so I will cough up something that looks quite green. Sorry for TMI, but I'll use inhalers, all of that, and I would love to leave that stuff in the past. So I did manage to quit the vaping. One strategy that I would use is to have a very long list of activities that I enjoyed doing. And so when I felt a craving coming on to do the activity of vaping, I would switch things up and do an activity that I enjoyed, whether it would be to do a piece of art or go for a walk, or and this booklet that they gave me would contain lots of suggestions like that. And happily, they gave me a brand new booklet, as mine from years ago was dog-eared. So a couple of weeks ago, they gave me a brand new one. So.
Great. And, I think you've highlighted the complexity that comes along with this quit journey, that it's not just about smoking or not just about vaping, and the tension that exists about going back and forth between the two substances, which we are still trying to figure out in this field. So I think you've highlighted that. And of course, all the other issues that people are struggling with. So thank you for sharing that. So based on your experiences and what you've come to learn from this, what was the hardest part about quitting for each of you? And what would have been helpful? What kind of support systems, programs, other supports that could have been helpful to help deal with that hardest part? Maybe we'll start at the end this time and work our way back.
Sure. So I know that for me, CAMH's Nicotine Dependence Clinic has always been there for me. And I think maybe I began going there, it's got to be at least 10 years ago now, because as I mentioned, I did successfully quit nicotine products twice for 3 years each time. And one of the biggest challenges that I have had has been when things got stressful in my life. Something in my mind would suggest to me, Lori, things are so stressful right now. Smoking would really help to alleviate that amount of stress that you have right now. And unfortunately, it did feel quite true. It did help me to just take an edge off and to relax a little bit. But obviously the long term is disaster. So, and then I end up back in this revolving door of coming back. But they, like I said before, generously accept me back. So I feel that for me, the hardest part has been when there are very stressful circumstances in my life. I have a long-term health condition called endometriosis, which produces chronic pain in my abdomen. And this is a very, very underfunded disease. 1 in 10 women have it, and people don't pay attention to it. Women suffer in silence. And all of these aspects cause a huge amount of stress in my life. So I found myself going back to cigarettes constantly, going back to vaping when I felt I wanted to put the cigarettes down. So I think that just thinking about the question that you asked, what other types of strategies might have been helpful? I thought that actually, like some sort of a phone line to be able to have somebody that I could just sort of quickly talk to, because I do live on the east end of the city, and KMH being situated on the west side of the city, it's quite a long journey. Their clinic does have a support group, it just occurred to me that maybe something like a phone line might have been something that might have been nice to be able to just call up when I was maybe having that craving and I didn't want to just take that vape or take that cigarette.
Yeah, and again, I think most of us know now that stress is one of the leading causes of, or the most difficult part of quitting smoking. So I think you highlighted that, but also the pain issues, right? So again, this is lots of complexity here, and maybe we as healthcare providers need to pay attention to everything that the client might be going through to help support. Okay.
Yeah, so definitely stress. I mean, the hardest part of quitting, it was like, I remember I was working a full-time job, and I was like constantly, taking a break to go hit a vape because it's like a stressful job. I got a lot of things going on at once. I'm like, and then I was realizing, I think I'm creating my own sort of anxiety, right? So that I have an excuse to vape or smoke a cigarette or whatever, right? Or have, like, it was mainly vaping for me. But anyways, the hardest part for me quitting was not only the stress, but the social aspect that it offered, right? Because there was many kids in high school and in the workforce, right? Where you're like, oh, well, let's just go hang out outside or hang out in the bathroom and vape or something like that, right? And you get to have a little chat. And it's like, my biggest fear when I was quitting was, losing that social aspect. But you only lose it if you really try to lose it, right? And some things that were helpful was my support system, right? I mean, my parents and my doctors, they were there for me. They were helping me, and they allowed me to actually move forward, right, and let me get the help that I need.
Thanks, Connor. And so, I mean, I think a support system is really important in this area, and having people, rally and provide the support that you specifically need. And, you spoke about what comes to mind for me is that even though you were trying to quit and you started your journey, there is a readiness component there, right? In terms of, well, I still missed it. And, oh yeah, I needed this strategy, and trying to convince yourself. So that speaks to your readiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay.
For me, it was stress as well, but as well the easy access. There's always, corner stores always sell vapes, and plus, basically all my friends have vapes. So even if I didn't have my own, and when I was, not buying them on my own, I still had friends that were able to spot me. But like Connor said, the support group is really helpful. Like, my family helped me a lot, and my friends, in a sense as well. Like, they don't want to share their nicotine, so, it helps that I don't want to take it anymore.
Thanks, Julien. Yeah, other people using the substances around us can be a big trigger. So I like the strategies that you used.
Can I add something
Sure.
to that?
Sure.
One thing that I have found in being 5 years clean in my own harm reduction program, and just to add to what Connor is explaining about this unfortunate situation that, and I mean, me being 53, I mean, I've watched this my entire life, is that, in order to have this social moment that we all love, you have to be killing yourself in order to do it. But what I now have adopted with this harm reduction program that I crafted for myself and I love is that when I go to the bar, I have preset plans for myself. My one drink is lasting 1 hour. my one evening is only going to comprise of 2 or 3 drinks. So one thing that I think is really fun is that you can actually trick the world and you can say, oh, let's go out for that vape. And then when you get there, say, oh, I changed my mind. But you can have that social time and then they're left vaping and you're left standing there not vaping, staying healthy, and getting your social time in. So you've got to be smart and be the master of your own universe.
And creative for sure. Yes, thank you. So in this field, there's a lot of tobacco control advocates who are doing lots of work in terms of flavors. And this is something that we've been talking about for many years. And this may or may not apply to all of you, but how did using flavored vapes impact your experience with quitting? If at all, it may not have. Were there any strategies you used to relieve some of the cravings to the flavors in particular? Julien, why don't we start with you?
I wouldn't say directly flavors affected me. I would say that it made it, I guess, intriguing to vape. Like I wouldn't vape if it was just plain, like just air, or if it was menthol all the time. It would not be enjoyable at all. But in a sense, I feel like it also helped because I was starting to get sick and tired of like the flavor of vape juice building up in my throat. If that, like, because you're inhaling the vapor, but the liquid still builds up. And yeah, I could not handle it anymore.
Yeah, not a pleasant experience, it sounds like. Okay. Connor.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. The spit of the vape and goes in your tongue, it burns, it's disgusting. And I remember the easiest part about vaping was that the fact that I could conceal it so well because of the flavors, right? It's like, oh yeah, well, I can vape in my room at home, right? And my parents wouldn't know, or I could vape in freaking class. And the teacher wouldn't know because it would just smell like, oh, someone has a nice little smelling hand sanitizer, right? And then there's always the popular flavor of mango. And I know now that I like honestly detest the flavor of artificial mango. But what I did was I sort of switched off. I switched to a less desirable flavor, and then it allowed me to sort of just move forward and just get away from it, right?
Okay, great.
That situation doesn't apply to me quite as much. No, I didn't vape for long enough to get entrenched into those flavors. Yeah.
Okay, great. And as you can see, everyone's experience is different, so we appreciate that. So many of you access the healthcare system to help get some support with quitting vaping. What did you want to hear from your healthcare professionals or others around you while you were quitting? What would you have wanted to hear from those helping you when you were trying to quit? Connor, why don't we start with you this time?
Yeah, well, I mean, it definitely helps having a support system, right? And I mean, one of the things that I would have hated to hear and probably would have completely discouraged me was having some sort of criticism towards me, right, for being vulnerable and actually opening up about an issue that I have, right? As well, saying that there's no help for me, right? It's like you're on your own, right? Or saying, oh yeah, you can do it, but it's going to cost you an arm and a leg and you're not going to like it, right? And I appreciated the support that I was given, the openness and the kindness and the caring that I was given in order for me to actually take that step in my journey, right? Because it made me feel like I wasn't actually lost, right? It made me feel like I had something to come back to once I was finally done.
Okay, so being supportive, non-judgmental, the criticisms don't help, right?
Yeah.
The judgments don't help. That we definitely should know by now, but good for you to kind of reinforce that message. I think that's really helpful.
So I think that for me, every experience that I've had at the KMH Nicotine Dependence Clinic has been just top notch and about as professional as it gets. Every time that I've walked in there and I've been in need, I think that maybe the only thing that I could say was that getting started, the slight delay of getting that doctor appointment and getting into the program and getting started was about the only criticism that I could have. So if somebody comes into your office and is really wanting to get started quitting smoking, to just maybe try and see them immediately and get them started right away. I think that would be the only thing. I think it might have been about 2 months the very first time I tried to quit smoking, that it was quite a significant delay to get me in to see the doctor the very first time. But aside from that, I think they give you a period of a year to have access to all the patches and all of the stuff that you need and the doctor appointments that you need. And like I said, everything, it was exceptional as well. I believe that the doctors are of the level of, psychiatric level. And so they are equipped to have a conversation with you about, those other aspects of your life that may be feeding into this addiction that is pervasive in your life. So I felt comfortable to be able to talk to them about all these aspects of my life that were causing me to continue to have this nicotine addiction. And I am right now in the final 6 weeks of the 1 year this time around for quitting smoking. And strangely, I learned last week that it was going to be the doctor that I see at the nicotine dependence clinic that was going to be on this panel. Unfortunately, he was not feeling well, and you have joined us this morning instead. But 1 week ago, knowing that he was going to be on this panel, I said, Lori, you are not picking up another pack of cigarettes. That is it. And I am on now day 5 of no cigarettes, and I'm not turning back. I have a patch on right now. I have all the nicotine lozenges that I need. And so I am officially quit. And like you said earlier, I'm a non-smoker now. Yay.
Larry, I like the way you're using all of the resources at your disposal. I'm really happy about that, because that's what we're trying to do here at the clinic. And you know what, you highlight a really important point. And Dr. Selby's goal for the clinic is to have a maximum of 1 week wait time. And so 2 months is a long time. And I think that really highlights the need for us to be ready when the client is ready. So if their client is saying, I want to quit smoking, there is a window, right, that we need to get in there to provide that support. So we need to pay attention to that a little bit more.
That is going back about 6 or 8 years. So I'm sure that you're doing better now if that has been a goal.
It's an ongoing issue, and it comes and goes, right?
Okay.
And it's something that we have to always work on, because again, that's really important to the person coming to the clinic, is when they're asking for help, it's please help me now. And so we need to really pay attention to that to provide that support. So I'm glad that you're highlighting some of these, because we all know, we all work in the healthcare system. We're all users of the healthcare system. We all know it's not perfect. So it's our job to be on top of some of these gaps to be able to provide you that support. Julien, anything to add to all of that?
When it comes to stuff I wanted to hear, I think I got it all, and I think it was mentioned already before. But what I didn't like as much was the, I guess, questioning of my commitment. To a lot of people, it seemed like I just had 1 foot out the door, because I wasn't just quitting immediately, or I wasn't actually swapping how I was taking nicotine, like to patches or gum. But yeah, that's about it.
So it's interesting, right? Like, you were criticized, or the comment was that you had 1 foot out the door, versus you had 1 foot in the door. Like, you were actually doing something about it. And I'll take that any day from anybody. It's like you're there. And one of the reasons that people aren't quite 2 feet in the door is because there's a lot going on, right? So I think that's an important thing, because that feels a bit critical. And why aren't you fully committed versus, okay, you are committed, you've got 1 foot in the door, and let's work with that. And the other thing, you were trying the patch and then some of the other products. We have guidelines, we have evidence, but we don't have the perfect formula. And it is trial and error, and that sounds like that's what you were doing, right? So maybe it would have been more helpful to hear people kind of pointing out some of the things you were doing to try and quit. Okay, thank you. Okay, so again, this may or may not apply to everyone, but social media is a big part of our lives. And we also know, again, in this field, we do a lot of work trying to hold tobacco companies accountable for some of the, for actually their huge contribution to this issue. But how did social media or advertisements from vaping companies, tobacco companies, influence your perceptions of vaping, about vaping? Oh, yeah,
Well-
it's up to me. Who
Well,
wants to
I
go
mean-
first?
I mean, social media does what it always does. It makes the bad things seem cool, right? Makes smoking cigarettes, vaping seem cool, right? And I thought it wasn't as bad as it actually was. You know, it was like, oh, well, it's not actually as bad as cigarettes, but it's like you're still inhaling carcinogens. So it's like, okay, how much less bad is it really, right? Sure, it's probably the lesser of two evils, but it's still an evil, right? So, what they do is they tend to manipulate, impressionable people, right, into thinking, oh, this is something that it's not as bad for me as it actually is, right? And I'm actually cool because I'm doing it. And now that I started doing it, I can't stop, right? And I don't want to stop now. So I think that's what it really does. So
Yeah, I think you've summarized that really nicely. Laurie or Julien, anything to add to that?
I don't think that social media so much affected me when it came to vaping. However, somebody new took over a convenience store in my neighborhood, and the very front few feet of it, they turned into a vape store and made it 24-hour. And so, whereas I would have had to walk at least 12 to 15 minutes to get to my vaping habit, they just made it that much easier for me. And luckily, I had quit by that time. But if I hadn't and I was still struggling, then that would have been a very bad thing for me. So I think that, yeah, like you said, people taking advantage of vulnerable people all over the place. And so it's an uphill battle for the person trying to quit, for the people trying to help them. Yeah. So whether it's social media or whether it's people trying to grift on the whole affair, yeah, it's a battle.
Absolutely. They're in your face, right? Whether it's on social media, the advertisements, or the physical actual spaces, and having to walk by these establishments and be triggered every single time. And people are trying their hardest. But so we know accessibility and visibility is one of the strategies that these companies use to, help people stay engaged in that behavior. So something really important and lots of work for us to be doing on that end. Julien, anything from your perspective?
There's a slight mix of influences from social media, at least. You get a lot of people vaping, doing like the wildest stuff that looked kind of interesting. It's like, maybe I could do that. But at the same time, you would get like ads from the government of Ontario or other organizations showing how bad it is to vape, and like how kids, like I'd see stories of kids younger than me end up in the hospital with critical condition, maybe even passing away, unfortunately, because they have asthma and they were vaping, and I have asthma as well. So that was a huge sign, as well as billboards around the city, just constant reminders.
Yeah, when you're trying to put this out of your mind, it's really hard when it's constantly in your face, and they do make it interesting and engaging, right? So, okay, and still on this kind of theme, what would you have wanted from healthcare providers? What kind of information would have wanted them, to share and maybe address misinformation or myths about all of this? I'll leave it open to whoever wants to.
Yeah, I'll make mention of that. I don't actually directly remember any of the doctors that I've seen in the clinic talking to me about statistics, especially maybe something that would be pertinent to somebody, number one, of my age group, so women in my age group. Number two, given the fact that I do have COPD. So, yeah, like that's a whole pile of scare tactics that you can use to maybe have gotten me to quit sooner than I did, because the fact that they do give you a year's worth of nicotine replacement materials to get yourself quit. Well, I'm down to my last 6 weeks. Maybe if in month 2 they had shown me a lot of information about statistics that were really, quite scary about, what could happen with my COPD if I continued to smoke, those types of things. I don't remember ever being shown or told about any kind of statistics or what possibly could happen with my COPD. Or even if I didn't have COPD, just statistics about smoking, anything like that. I think that could probably be added into the mix in terms of just letting people know this is what you're doing to yourself when you just continue to pick up a pack of cigarettes or continue to vape.
Okay, so providing some information and, statistics and, some facts about what the behavior.
What it is that you're doing to yourself, yeah.
And to make it specific to the client, right?
Yes.
So you specifically are dealing with COPD.
Female, 53 years old.
Right, and so that information, the healthcare provider can tailor it so it's meaningful to you. So you can situate yourself in that discussion. It's like, oh yes, this is relevant.
Yeah, because I don't have an awareness of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just blindly going to the store and picking up a pack of cigarettes because it feels good, or picking up a vape because it feels good, and it's lowering my stress. My perception is that it's lowering my stress, but it's a short-term gain for long-term pain.
Yeah. Okay.
But I don't know what that long-term pain is, so I need that health provider to provide me with that information.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I actually totally agree with Lori on this one. I mean, like, the fact that we have no idea what like the mortality of vapes are, it's kind of scary, right? Because I mean, these are this new thing that's basically permeated all of society, right? So, and we are also like, I was also completely unaware about how many people were struggling with the issues, and I honestly felt kind of alone. Like I had a feeling that like a lot of people were struggling, right? But it's like, but anybody who wants to quit, they just quit like that, right? And I'm the only one who's struggling, and I had no idea because my doctor never really mentioned it, right? And I mean, like, if I was maybe aware of these things a little bit more, it might have made my time a little bit easier, right? That to help me take that next step, right? And then identify less with smoking and identify more with, health and living, right?
I really like the way you frame that, Connor. I mean, I think that sometimes we take it for granted as healthcare providers that people know some of the harms that come from some of these substances, whether it's tobacco or vaping or nicotine, et cetera, but not to make that assumption and, to help provide whatever information to help you feel less alone and more connected to the goal of, choosing a healthier life, right?
Yeah.
So.
And it does depersonalize it, right?
Yeah,
so
I
you
agree.
don't feel so alone, because feeling so alone can actually add to your stress and cause you to continue vaping.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Julien, anything else to add?
Probably not. I didn't
Yeah.
really talk to much healthcare advisors. They're just like what I saw in the news or in the media.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So, I mean, those were some of the questions that came from our participants. However, we will open it up to other additional questions. Now, I'm going to do my best to look at the questions to see the chat. Let's see. Okay. Hello, Marilyn. Nice to see your comment. So, from Marilyn, does the packaging on cigarettes have an impact when you open the pack? Should there be similar information on vaping products to deter smoking? And I guess vaping.
Like,
Anybody?
I mean, I smoke cigarettes as well as vape, but I mean, like, I always thought the packaging was like, oh, that's a disgusting sight. Whatever, I need to get my fix. So I don't think it did anything, right? It's like, oh, cool, I get to see a disgusting image of a lung, and then whatever, I'm gonna open this pack of cigarettes and light it anyways, or I'm gonna open this vape anyways because I want to hit it, right? It was really more like the knowledge that I was poisoning myself was more of a motivation than the the image on a package, right? Because it's so easy to just discriminate because you just want to see you just want to have the release from the nicotine vehicle, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I make a comment
Sure.
there? I find those images offensive, and I also find them to be an insult to my intelligence. If you're going to put something like that, put an intelligent statistic that is going to inform me,
Yeah.
not a picture of somebody's cancerous tongue.
Ugh.
It's disgusting, and I would immediately go home, open up my filing cabinet to where I have my sticky labels, pull off a sticky label, and place it right over it so that I didn't have to look at it. I don't know whose idea in the government that was, but I don't think it deterred a single person. I can't imagine that it did. Disgusting and an insult to my intelligence. If you're going to put something like that, put an intelligent statistic that is accurate, that is meant to inform me. That's all I can say about that.
Yeah,
So please
Yeah.
don't do it on vapes
And-
either, because I don't think it's going
It's
to
not
work.
true.
It's just going to be annoying and awful.
Like, as a matter of fact, making something a little bit more encouraging, right? To actually want to read, like, oh, actually, this something is like, did you know, right? Vaping can lead to this types of cancer, whatever, and can cause these kinds of conditions. I'm like, oh, whoa, that's interesting. Maybe I want to do more research on that. Oh, crap, this stuff is actually pretty bad. I don't know if I want to do this anymore, right? As opposed to seeing like just a vile image.
Or someone who recovered from cancer
Yeah.
went on to run a 10K marathon or something encouraging.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
So
great
we're
idea.
using more positive messages and imagery, some statistics to really highlight some of this information, but focusing more on what you can do
Yeah.
versus trying to scare people with these images. Sounds like that would have been more helpful.
Yes.
Okay, there's a question from one of the panelists. So he or she or they ask their clients, how do you think a non-smoker or a non-vapor handle this stressful situation? Is that question helpful from a client's point of view? Does it help to learn new strategies, or does it actually cause more stress? Does that make sense?
I don't really understand
Yeah,
that.
it's I know it's layered, and I was trying. So the person asks their client how they think a non-smoker or non-vapor would handle a particular situation that they're facing. So they might come in and say, my whole family smoke in the house and they vape as well. And so the way they ask that question is to ask the client to reflect how a non-smoker or non-vapor would handle it. But is that, I guess the person's asking, is that a helpful question?
Yeah.
Or will it actually cause more stress for the client because they're not a non-smoker or non-vapor? Does that make more sense now, the way I explained it?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, like, the way I see it is like, when you're in it, right? There's no way around being in it. It's like, how would a non-smoker react? Well, they wouldn't smoke, right? Like, that's like the plain and simple answer. They wouldn't smoke, right? They would use various other coping mechanisms. I would surmise, but I don't know if it's it's the most helpful thing to do, right? As opposed to maybe promoting alternate coping mechanisms for stress, right? Because ultimately, vaping and smoking cigarettes, it's a coping mechanism, right? You're coping for something, right? And it's like, okay, well, I don't know what it's like not smoking, right? So I don't know what a non-smoker does. So I'm just going to continue doing my thing, coping, right? Because I'm not being told any other ways to cope with this. So yeah, I mean, it could be helpful with the right person, but I would think ultimately it's better to give them methods in which to overcome the problem.
Okay. Until they're actually starting to build that image or okay,
exactly.
that identity. All right. Open to all of you, I think. Is it harder to stop vaping or smoking cigarettes? Or is it the same?
I mean,
I would say cigarettes because they have chemicals in them that make it easier to actually hit. So in a sense, they're made for you to not, like, yes, like they're made to get more addicted in a sense. Like they're made to be easier to smoke.
Oh, they are very much designed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Good one, Julien.
like, I mean, you know, I thought, because I did both, right? And I thought they were pretty much the same release ultimately, right? But cigarettes, I don't know, just felt easier. I don't know how else to describe it. But even though you had to be outside and you had to light it, it just felt easier because you get to hold it in your hand, and then you get the like feeling in your lungs, and then you get the head rush, and then you're good. It's like a design sort of, it's like a design process, right? And it's just, I think about it and I'm getting a craving, right? And it's like, right?
Me too.
Yeah.
And we'll support you with this after the
like-
webinar. But I think what you're talking about is that we shouldn't make an assumption that one is more addicted or less addicted than the other, one is more challenging. It's really an individual experience, and we need to pay attention to your experience.
I could answer that from my own personal experience as well, but I would agree with Connor. I think that the actual like substance of that cloud of smoke is just that much stronger in a cigarette than in a vape. I definitely feel that. And it's kind of similar to smoking a joint versus vaping marijuana. I think that it's just that much stronger in the burning of it, of the substance. Yeah. So
Okay, pretty consistent, I think, from all three of you. Okay, so another question. What is an optimal way to target youth on vape nicotine products, messaging through social media? If you had to create a strategy in 1 minute or less, keeping in mind what's being done right now and what makes an impression on you. So I think that it's a long question, but I think it's what's an optimal way to target youth in this area? Any suggestions on that? If you take a step back and say what would have helped for you?
I think I would take it back to what I was referring to a little bit earlier in be your own person, make your own choices, be the master of your own destiny, and not be a follower. But kind of, you can be crafty about it. You can be like, oh yeah, I'm one of the gang. Oh, I'm hanging out with the vapors or whatever. But not always, and then somebody tries to pass you on, oh no, I'm okay. So being creative about how you refuse, so if they could manage to create a campaign that kind of made you the clever one, then I think that would go a long way.
So teaching our youth to be leaders, not followers, and being creative in their approach, but also refusal skills, which is a big one. When
right,
you're young.
you're not announcing, I don't do that. It's like, oh, just keep it on the down low, kind of, just kind of, just keeping it on the down low that, oh no, I'm okay. Oh, I've had some today already. I'm fine.
Connor, sounds like you want to say something.
Well, I was actually going to say something on that point too. It's like, why would we talk to the youth about this? If we tell them no, they're just going to want to. That's what I did. That's what I did to my parents. That's what I think most kids do to their parents, right? Be encouraging to, not be addicted to things because it it's a vice, right? But ultimately, you know, teaching people to be a leader, be creative, be beyond the need of an addiction, right? And not really speaking on a direct issue, right? Because it's like, don't vape, kids. And then it's like, okay, well, screw you. I want to vape. I want to do my own thing, right? And it's like, they're kids. They're gonna want to rebel. So I don't think it's good to directly tell them that sort of stuff.
So keeping it more general and
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, switching from vaping to tobacco before quitting, did that make your COPD worse?
Everything makes the COPD worse. I have actually felt quite a lot of relief just only 5 days out from my last cigarette. The vaping was very bad for my COPD. The cigarettes was very bad for my COPD. I constantly would tell myself, okay, Lori, we're not going to smoke in our apartment, but I would always smoke in my apartment. And I live in a very small bachelor, and so with little small windows, so not a lot of ventilation. And I think that just any of it is not good. And getting outside and getting lots of walking in and trying to get, exercise, even doing like a little bit of dancing in my apartment and cardio and things like that. And even getting around the apartment and doing some like housework and stuff like that, just keeping moving and everything like that. Obviously, like the vaping is not going to be quite as bad as the smoking of cigarettes for the COPD, but any of it. I like when I wasn't smoking or vaping, the coughing up of the green stuff mysteriously disappears, and then as the second that I'm back smoking or vaping, back it comes. So it's just the irritant that is in there and causes the problems.
So just a couple of comments that I wanted to share with the panelists, just kind of affirming some of the comments and information that you've been providing. So another participant shared that, her mom was a heavy smoker and had gangrene to her leg, which had to be amputated. And when she sees those photos on the packages, where'd it go? Oh no. Of course it wasn't gonna go smooth. It made her cringe, right? So I see smokers in later life that ended up with amputation, and that people respond to the pictures because it's repulsive. So it sounds like pictures don't deter you, but maybe affect you. The images did work when they were first introduced, and many people quit. They're probably close to quitting, but now people are used to them.
Actually, that's a good point, though, right? Changing the image that is to encourage people to smoke, because discourage people from smoking, because like you get used to it after about a couple of years. So you change it up constantly. The packaging constantly has to change. Well, number one, it's more expensive on the nicotine companies, right? Because they have to constantly change their packaging. And number two, it's a constant novel sort of cue where you have to like, oh wait, this is new. What does this say? Oh, this isn't so good. And maybe you'll be less desensitized to it in the coming days, right?
Okay, I think we'll take one final question. Julien, this one's for you because it's related to asthma. Did quitting smoking help your asthma symptoms? And is there any message you'd want to share with younger people on quitting smoking or vaping?
I'd say, yeah, it's helped a lot. It's also helped with being a lot more active. I'm able to do cardio somewhat. I haven't been going out as much. So the issue now isn't as much my lungs, as much my body. But it's made my breathing a lot clearer. I don't cough for no random reason either. I used to get sore throats like somewhat often, like once every couple of months. And now I'm perfectly fine, perfectly healthy. And so I would definitely encourage kids that have asthma to get away from that as fast as possible. Because I don't think there's as much of you don't have the same amount of time as you do if you didn't have asthma or if you were just smoking cigarettes because I know on the packaging it's always long term, and that's how they also get you. But with asthma, it is a lot more short term, and it can affect you at a young age.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. So I think we'll kind of stop here. I'm going to give you, in 15 seconds or less, you've got an audience of healthcare providers. What's the one message you want to leave them with today? And you can pass or you can share. Lori, why don't we start with you? And then, so 15 minutes or less, 15 seconds or less. Sorry, we don't have 15 minutes.
Sure. So I think my message for healthcare providers would be to one of my biggest pet peeves right now is that I unfortunately come from a family of intergenerational trauma, and I have been misdiagnosed with a whole host of mental health issues, and finally was diagnosed with CPTSD, which is complex PTSD. And complex PTSD, I think, is very prevalent. And unfortunately, this is not in the DSM-5. And I would like to spread awareness. There is so many people that have experienced trauma, whether it comes from intergenerational family systems that are a mess, or whether it is workplace bullying that takes place everywhere. And then, down the line are addiction issues and nicotine dependence and the whole host of other problems. So I am just hoping to share my own personal experiences with having been diagnosed with OCD, bipolar, major depressive disorder, even borderline personality disorder, when meanwhile I had CPTSD from traumatic family systems. And so please, healthcare providers, have an awareness of complex PTSD because it exists. Even if you have to watch YouTube channel to find out about this, just because it's not in the DSM does not mean it doesn't exist. And I know I'm a little off topic here, but I need this to be have a little more awareness out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Connor or Julien?
Yeah, swapping behaviors instead of completely stopping a single behavior is easier. One thing I did when I was quitting is I took up various habits and various structures of my life in order to help me move forward, as opposed to being cold turkey and just sitting there knowing that I can't smoke. So.
All right. And Julien, anything to add to that? No. All right, great. So I am now going to pass it on to Natalie, but while Natalie comes over, I just want to thank our three panelists for sharing some really important and helpful information. And I think a lot of our participants will be very grateful for this. I'm seeing some of the comments already online. And thank you for joining us today. So Natalie, it's up to you to take us home or into lunch anyway.
Thank you, Rosa. All right. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again for the three of you for being so vulnerable and sharing your real world experiences with us today. And thank you, Rosa, for moderating this great discussion. Just before we head out, I just want to remind everyone that this webinar has been recorded, and I'll be distributing a link to everyone who registered by tomorrow. Along with this, you'll also get the evaluation and post-learning assessment if you're interested in receiving a letter of completion for this round. Just make sure you complete that by next Wednesday. We also just want to take the time to let everyone know about our next webinar coming up on April 24th. That will be on the topic of pharmacological quit aids. So we hope to see some of you there. And if you missed a portion of today's webinar or would like to view it again or see a previous Teach webinar, as always, an archive list can be found on our website. For now, thank you all so much for listening and participating today. We hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, and thank you again to everyone here. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.